Okay. So we just watched Jessica essentially facilitate independent practice. So I'm going to keep marching. So now I've observed her classroom, and now I'm going to take you through sort of the next logical way to think about things to get to the teacher action that's likely holding Jessica back, or at least in theory. Okay. So the next thing I need to think about as a CMA is, and actually, can someone read this for me?
The next thing I need to know is, are the students learning what they're supposed to be learning? And how do I know this?
Okay. So I interpret this two ways. One, like literally, is the objective correct for this group of students? Luckily, because corners are given objectives, that answer should always be yes. And if it's not, that's sort of more on us than the corner. The second thing is literally as a CMA, when I leave that classroom, do I know if students have or have not learned? And what that's going to take is me sort of getting up from my computer and walking around and looking at student work. Okay? If you leave a classroom and you haven't looked at what students have done, you're sort of guessing at what they've done. And so when you leave a classroom, you should know sort of generally, did students or did students not master the objective for today? Because that's going to be the start of your conversation, right? We start all the conversations by looking at data. So in Jessica's case, the objective was rigorous. I had checked that before I went into the classroom, and it was appropriate for her kids. But as I walked around when I was observing, what I noticed is that I'm generally, probably over 50% of those students did not master that daily objective, because from what I saw, over 50% of the students were not even using the tiles to make the mixed numbers that they were supposed to be making. Okay. Jessica's going to bring her data, and that may change when I get to the conversation, but as of now, and from walking around in the classroom, what I saw is that the majority of those students did not master today's objective. I'm already able to start thinking, okay, this is a lesson that did not get to the outcomes, so now I know something that the teacher did was pulling students back from being able to do that. Okay. Next question. Someone read this.
To decide which of the teacher's actions is probably the biggest deal, I must consider those actions in a logical order. The TAL rubric can help me do so.
Okay, so when we talked yesterday about like how is the TAL rubric a professional development tool, like this is a place where that answer lives in a big way. The TAL is a menu of teacher actions, like I said earlier. And so what we need to do is look at that menu and figure out of this menu, like what are some of my options. What the TAL does not do is prioritize those for you. Right? In some ways it does, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But for the most part, investment and management, I mean, any of those could come before the other. And so now we need to use some critical thinking and some logic to get to a theory that makes the most sense. So this is the general order of that. Can someone read this, please?
First, I need to find out if the students aren't learning or aren't learning as much as they should be. Is this because their teacher has some weaknesses? Does the teacher have a vision of where her students need to be, and has she crafted a plan that will take them there?
Okay, why are we starting here? The TAL is a menu, I said it doesn't prioritize, but we're always going to start here. Why?
If you don't have a plan, you can't execute it.
Right, so if the teacher doesn't have a plan, then I'm going to guess I'm going to see that in execution. So if we know something about the plan is wrong, right, before we go into the observation, because we're going to look at lesson plans before we go into every observation. If we know either that it's not aligned, or that the assessment's not aligned to the objective, or that actually guided practice is not guided practice, or intro is actually guided, or things like that that generally happen, then when I go into that classroom, I'm going to see that manifest in ways, right? Like if that's true on paper, it's going to come out in the classroom. And now my job as an observer is to figure out, okay, if I know planning is it and I want to talk to you about planning, now I'm taking notes in a way that allows me to show you how this plan led to some specific student actions. In Jessica's case, we went into this knowing actually she's like at an AP lesson plan. So on paper, this actually could have looked a lot differently. And so now I can move on to my thinking. But does that make sense, people? If we go in knowing the plan's not good, we need to take notes in a specific way to highlight people. Because I think in some cases, because we beat planning in so much to their heads, at some point they want to stop talking. They're like, help me with other things, right? And they're like, I want to move on to management. I know my management's bad. And so we have to like show them and illuminate for them. Actually, on paper, I predicted that this might happen. And let me show you where it did, or something. That doesn't sound cocky is what I just said. But like something that illuminates what just happened to them. Okay.
Christine,
So,
can I just say
please, yes.
So that just makes me think about the importance of making sure that we're getting planning right for core members, and the importance of lesson planning clinics, because it will be unfortunate if we can never talk about
Right.
investment or execution with our core members before they leave, but we probably won't. So planning is just this huge thing, and then I also just like fast forward to the summer. You know, part of your SD's job, Lanisha, Lauren, Chrissy, myself sometimes, you know, we're gonna ask you, CMA, can you describe to me the process that you're going through for analyzing this classroom? And we hope to hear you say, like, I've looked at the plan first. Just burn that into your head. I must look at the planning first. It seems so intuitive here, but again, with all the detail floating around, it can get lost.
Thanks. Okay, so now we're going to be able to move on to some of those other rows on tab, right? We're moving on from lesson planning, which I think now. So can someone read this?
The gaps in student learning don't seem to be based in planning. Does the teacher have an accurate gauge of the degree to which students are learning?
Okay. So the next question I'm asking myself is, again, does the teacher know if students are learning? And what's the action that sort of matches this? What things does the teacher do in a lesson? Exactly. Okay. Checks for understanding. The reason I'm asking this here, okay, is because checks for understanding is obviously an important teacher action. But also, if the teacher does not know that students did not learn when they come to the conversation with me, then I can't start talking to them about teacher actions that impacted student actions because they don't even know yet that students did not learn. Does that make sense? Okay, because if they come in and they're like, I thought it went well, then we need to kind of like spend a little more time on the front end. So with Jessica, I didn't see Jessica check for understanding at all in this particular lesson. So I'm guessing that she might not know, although what I'm guessing is she probably does know that students didn't learn. But I need to kind of keep this on the back burner of an option of a teacher action that I might keep thinking about. Okay, so it's on my list just because I never saw her do it once. So there's one teacher action I'm throwing up in the air for something Jessica might work on. Laura?
My question was, the thing that I really saw in the pre-work was that technical assistance was supposed to be targeted at the short observations. Is check for understanding, that it kind of seems to me like it would be sometimes a technical thing, but is that something that can be addressed in the longer debrief?
I think it depends on where the teacher's at. For a lot of core members, and I think it's hard for them. It's harder than you would think. But a lot of times they're doing things that are just really low level that actually aren't giving them information about what the students do or don't know. So like something like thumbs up or thumbs down, where it's like, and then they're not asking many students to tell you like, they're checking, quote, but it's actually not giving them any information that tells them sort of, what do I do now as a teacher? I just got new information, I need to adjust my lesson plan. So I'm not giving you a straight answer other than to say, it's harder for them than you might think. So I would say probably, if I had an answer, it falls more into like a real teacher action to help them with it, like technical. Yeah. So for Jessica right now, it's just like on the list, although my hunch is it's not the #1 thing holding her back at this point. Probably doesn't surprise me very much. Okay. Can I have a reader?
Next, I'll continue to consider execution and investment. In what other ways is the teacher contributing? Has he or she established an environment conducive to learning? Is he or she executing his or her lesson plan well? Are students invested in the goals of the lesson?
Thanks, Liz. Okay. So now we have the rest of tab, right? We have all the investment rows, we have all the executing rows, and we need to pick and prioritize. This is hard to do, I think, because a lot of things were going on in that classroom, and sometimes it's hard to, in your own mind, figure out what was going on in that classroom to get to that. So I'm going to throw out some ideas I have for Jessica right now. The first thing is facilitating practice, okay? So I didn't really see her introducing or facilitating what they were supposed to be doing during that time. And I think she's sort of unclear on the direction she was supposed to be giving them for that practice. What's interesting is it was in her plan, but I just didn't see it here. And so it looked like maybe kids did not know what they were supposed to be doing. Okay, so that's sort of one, actually facilitating practice. The other idea I have here is management of expectations during this activity. So I saw her talk a lot about what they shouldn't be doing with tiles. I never heard her say clearly what they should be doing, and when they weren't doing those things or were doing those things, I didn't see her ever address it. So the behavior sort of just continued throughout my whole observation. Okay, a lot of laughing, a lot of talking while she's talking, a lot of off-task behavior that never got addressed while I was in the class.